everyone, Savannah Croxton here, just checking in with everyone. We're doing an assignment for Music 326, and tonight I'm going to be discussing the material that we have been going over from chapters 1 through 3 in our General Methods textbook. The topics we'll kind of be discussing are tonight are the meaning of music in children's lives, from theory to practice and teaching music to children in the classroom, and then the different methods of teaching music to children. First off, music has tons of functions, which a few of them to name are emotional expression, which children or anyone really can express through sadness and joy through the physical response such as dance and song. Then there's aesthetic enjoyment, which is connecting emotionally, intellectually, and being able to express oneself through music, and when they might not necessarily have the words to explain themselves. And then, of course, in our age today especially, we have musical diversion, especially through the media, so entertainment is a big one. And then a couple of others that, among the list of musical functions, are conveying feelings through verbal communication, especially in all of our different cultures around the world. And music has also been a huge part, again, in cultural stability, and it's always been integrated in our society, and music is something that everyone in the world has in common. Everyone has this connection with music and can access it, and that's a huge part of the importance of integrating music in young children's education. To piggyback off of that comes children's musical capabilities. Many say that you would have to be a musician and be musical, and only certain people are born with that skill to be a musician one day when they grow up, and it's most likely going to be when they grow up. But in truth, everyone really has that ability to access their inner musician. So, musical is an essential part of every child's development, especially in a social setting, familial setting, with their neighbors and friends. And music can also reach children in an intellectual level, emotional, physical, and even spiritual level, just depending on the way the music connects to that child. This is really supported kind of all throughout history. It's not just today, but in music, like a long time ago, music was a basic subject in the early Western world, and even before that. Music and the arts used to be considered a key fact in moral development in children as they were growing up and getting older. And then not only was music considered an art, some even considered it a science. Music was then further integrated into private academies. Music from the Baroque and classical periods spread throughout education, especially from influence of European trained masters in music. Musical training was encouraged in all schools, and eventually was encouraged for the growing public education, and not just in the upper class that kind of had that connection with people in the community. This led to music being added into the curriculum of the elementary school by a fellow named Lowell Mason in Boston. And Mason's methods in the school, he established being able to the learning by doing idea. He focused with listening and musical repetition, and this really led to children's ability to develop music literacy. And then he also included other ideas of learning through the senses, so all the senses like sight, hearing, all that good stuff. And then there's a really big thing that we've really been encouraged by Dr. Johnson, that sound should always come before sight. Let's see here. Music and dance became more prominent and was further infused in the classroom setting, and it really helped to develop a sense of rhythm. And movement especially has become important because it developed as a means of expression. So in physical, social, and cultural growth, movement became more prominent in children's expressiveness through music. These ideas were further developed by great methodologists and theorists such as Dalcroze, Kodai, Orff, Gordon, Weikart, and then projects such as Manhattan Musical music curriculum project, which we will discuss a little bit later. Hey, let's take a few moments and discuss putting theory into teaching practices. Children thrive in social settings, family settings, and the classroom setting. There has to be an established relationship with the teacher, and the teacher has to be able to establish musical instruction through these relationships with the children in the classroom. In a musical instruction, there should always be a set of events that the teacher follows, and there's always a learning process. This learning process includes the attention of the students, perception, memory, rehearsal, and the ability to recall the lessons or material that was covered in the class, either before, during, or after class. There's also needs to be intellectual, motor, cognitive learning outcomes established when talking about learning in the classroom setting. There are also stages or levels that learners go through to soak up all that knowledge, and the same really goes for music as any other subject in school. These levels were suggested by the Swiss biologist Jean Piaget, who conceptualized on childhood development. First, there's sensory motor level, which is direct sensory experience. There's pre-operational, which is learning manipulation of objects, and then learning the consequences or outcomes to learning the manipulation of tangible objects or ideas. Then there's concrete operations, which is viewing objects for what they are and absolutely, not necessarily abstractly. And then the fourth is formal operations, which builds into the abstract perception through logic and deductive reasoning. All these levels further support the idea that children should have music in their early development. With all these levels, they're going to be able to listen, sing, play, and move to music. We can also compare this concept to Jerome Bruner's theory on modes of representation in music learning. He had three big modes to music learning, and that's one is being inactive, which in the learning process and this directly corresponds to sensory motor through experience, so it's being active in the music learning. There's also iconic and symbolic, which correspond kind of to the concrete visual aid and going beyond the immediate environment, and so kind of thinking abstractly. Bruner also had this concept about the spiral curriculum, which is basically being able to explore and problem solve through age-appropriate experiences by repeating concepts and musical ideas and then embellishing and exaggerating the exposure that the children have to these musical lessons or ideas or materials. Another idea presented is the social learning theory, which is suggested by Albert Bandura. This is where children need to be able to observe and emulate their adult models. So as teachers, this is really important to be able to get the concept across so that students are going to be able to learn correctly and be able to model those and learn from that experience. Children will be able to have these musical learning opportunities with the proper facilitation on the teacher's end. So again, us as the teachers or teachers now will have to be able to present the material in such a way that the children can learn. So teachers need to be able to meet the needs, abilities, and desires and interests of all the students in the classroom. The teachers should know the children, need to begin the learning experience where the children are in their abilities and allow time for musical exploration and freedom to make kind of musical decisions that they feel like is necessary, and also be able to integrate music into other areas of the children's lives. So sometimes it's really cool to be able to integrate other subjects or cultural references, spiritualities, maybe just depending on the environment of the school and what they allow. Also, as teachers, we should be able to know the subject matter. It's kind of like Dr. Johnson said, there is a performance aspect as being a teacher. We need to be able to use all the stuff that we learn coming up in school to become a teacher, so like now in college, use what we learn to show the children, and they're going to be ideas that the children will enjoy. They'll respect us because we know what we're talking about, and then they'll be able to learn from us since we know our stuff. Again, so being able to model correct music behaviors and elements of music, such as great pitch, how to hold out those long notes, and then act and basically model the music exactly how you're going to want the students to give it back to you. And then another thing is to definitely be energetic and enthusiastic about the music. We want to teach and should always be excited to teach and for our kids to learn something new every single day. Then there should always be a structure, especially when music kind of has a variety of directions it can take in the classroom. A teacher needs to be able to start the class with a hook that's going to motivate the children's learning and excite them about the lesson and what's about to come. Then the next thing is just making sure that the material in the classroom is going to be really exciting for them. They're going to be able to enjoy it. It's going to be age appropriate, all that good stuff. And then ending the class with something musical and leave them wanting more. And then that's something they'll be able to take with them to their family, to their friends, show up on the playground, and then it's going to make them excited to come back to music next time to the class and be hungry for more. Also, as teachers, we need to be able to supply feedback, so giving the proper instruction, the students will respond to musical ideas, and then we can provide beneficial feedback that's going to help them in their learning process. We need to be able to also stimulate oral learning skills and then provide enough ample repetition and rehearsal so that the students are going to be able to soak in the fundamentals of music ideas and be like a sponge and really know their music when they get done with it. As teachers, we can put all of these teaching strategies into practice through exercises from different methods and theories developed for teaching music to children. One of the first methods we're going to talk about is the ORF approach, which I promised earlier we would talk about. The ORF approach is basically all about expression through music experience and creation. ORF was a German composer that experimented through music and dance, and he really wanted to focus on the natural behaviors of childhood, such as singing, saying or chanting, dancing, playing, and then also improvisation through music and creative movement. The second methodology we're going to talk about is Dalcroze. Dalcroze was basically movement with a mission. He was a Swiss theorist and composer. He liked the idea of improvising music on the piano, and he was big on this thing called eurythmics, and basically that is using natural rhythmic movement of the body to improve oral skills, which is really helpful in learning music, of course. Third is Kodály, a Hungarian composer and ethnomusicologist, and he was really influenced by traditional folk music and art, and he used this in his ideas on developing musical literacy and inner hearing. Next is the Gordon music learning theory. He used folk songs as well and to establish tonal and rhythmic patterns, and he had a really influential idea called audiation, which is basically hearing music in the mind before it is being played or sung or anything like that. So, audiation. And then Weikart was a physical ed specialist. He recorded arrangements of folk dance music and then used that to develop feelings of steady pulse and rhythm. And then lastly, what I said we would talk about was the MMCP, which is the Manhattanville Music Curriculum Project, which was developed by Ronald Thomas among other music educators, and they decided to use contemporary music and children's music pieces and wanted to improve musicianship through experimentation and musical experiences, and then just continue to explore endless possibilities in music. So as teachers, we're definitely not pinned down to just one theory or methodology, although some teachers or some people that go on to be music teachers, they decide to specialize in a particular methodology or theory, and they are particularly strong suited toward one. But we have to remember that all of them are dealing with music, and they're all encouraging active engagement with music, and then ultimately at the end of the day, there's one purpose to each methodology and theory, and that is to foster the music learning experiences in our childhood development and in our children today.